Arteta! What a strike! What a screamer!
Zola! And a fantastic goal! Arsenal back in it!
And here's Limpar, lines it up, finds the net. Arsenal in front.
And we are live. Welcome to the Arsenal Vision post-match podcast. My name is Elliot Smith. You can block me on Twitter at Yankee Gunner. This is a pre-match podcast for patrons. It is also a free live stream because while getting ready to do this with Scott, I was like, let's do it live. Screw it, we'll do it live. That's what we're doing. We're doing it live, and here to do it live with me is Scott. You can find him on Twitter at _that_grab. Hello, Scott.
Yeah. See, that's the problem with the two monitors. I started looking over here instead of looking over right at the camera, so I need to get better at that.
Look into the camera. You know, the camera pointed at you is the place to look. Scott, how is your week going?
It's going pretty good. It's been busy, but, you know, it's been one of those. It's nice that Arsenal didn't have to play, so I could kind of just watch everybody else, you know, either screw up or not. Some of the results have gone pretty well for Arsenal so far this week. Match. For the first time in what? I don't even know how long it's been since Arsenal have had a full week off. I could go look it up, but I'm not right now.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Like, I mean, no. Remember, the most important thing about being the analytics guy in the podcast is that you mostly go with assumptions, feelings, preferences, urges, things like that. There's no need for any accuracy in what we discuss. So it is interesting, though, right? Like, did you get a chance to watch any of the midweek matches? Because I think you can really get a sense watching other teams play and realizing how the fixtures are stacking up, just how important rest really is going to be. You know, I watched a lot of the matches and I feel like, and maybe it's narrative creeping into my viewership, but I feel that you can see the impact of the fatigue and the way the teams are struggling. Do you get that sense or not so much?
No, I definitely do. And yeah, I was able to watch most of them. You know, I wasn't able to, you know, do as close of a watch because, you know, I still have a day job or I have to do things. But yeah, well, you could definitely see that the pace of the matches has definitely gone down, the tempo of them. You know, I think this has been a thing that's been happening all season, is that there's just not as much pressing in this season as there's been in years past. I think this has really exposed the lack of depth in a lot of teams. I know one of the things that I've always kind of thought is that basically because everybody was such in a flux this summer, nobody was really able to cover up for a lot of the flaws in their teams. So it's really just exposed that. And I think especially when you start looking at the upper teams that have had, Europe, it's just really made that even more clear that they're just don't have the same level of talent outside of Manchester City, who has, you know, two teams basically that are nearly as good as each other. So it's bearing flaws that can be exploited at any time.
You know, Scott, I have to admit, I started to struggle to hear you, and I want to be clear. I think it's your internet.
Maybe.
I think my internet's fine. And so I want to just say this. I have been, how can I put this politely, unkind, ungenerous to Mediacom Cable. Those of you who are familiar with me talked about my internet. They've been digging in the ground for the better part of 2 weeks outside our neighborhood. And I believe they have fixed it. I believe that we are sorted permanently. Now, I don't want to get over my ski tips here, but all the speed tests look good. The ping, the latency, the speeds, they all look good. So we may be doing a lot more live content type stuff. We may be doing a lot of additional stuff in the future. But Scott, have I, much like a herpes virus, have I given you bad internet?
Maybe. I mean, I don't know. I'm gonna run a quick test right now, but as far as I know, my internet's been strong and haven't been any problems. Maybe I'll blame it on my children. Maybe they're doing something, and they're using up all of the internet.
Yeah, your internet's
I'm
pretty
looking
crap.
here. I'm not on my VPN or anything like that, so
great.
everything should be fine.
Feels great sitting here in my chair.
Yeah, I'm only getting 40 right now.
Aha. So it's good. How the turns have tabled how the turns have tabled. That's right. The Black River CEO deserves better connectivity.
Exactly right.
Thank you for noticing that. All right, let's get into some actual content about Arsenal, though.
I'm
hate
looking at
to
you,
do
and
that.
you're in like 4K, and I'm sitting here at 720.
You can see the bags under the eyes from having a young child. You can see the graying of the hair that hasn't been showered in days. You can see pet fur on the ugly shirt that I've been wearing the entire week. Really, you're getting the whole thing here. By the way, real quick announcement that I want to make. So this is important. We have a major event coming for the podcast, and it will be an event that will let everybody participate and get involved. We're going to be announcing details on it down the road. It is going to be something that I have been dreaming of doing with this community and with the podcast and with everybody. The pandemic got in the way. There was something that had to be canceled, but I think that we're going to be able to announce that something is going to be happening, and we're just kind of making sure that everything's going to line up for that. But it is an exciting opportunity, and I can't give away anything about it right now, but just stay tuned because that is going to be coming, and I'm really excited for it. So we'll bring Scott back in. Having said that, Scott, let me start by asking you, when we look at the table, I mean, obviously the Chelsea-Liverpool game was an eye-opener for me. I think I have sort of just assumed Liverpool will sort this out and get it right. And I just kind of felt that eventually it would work out where Liverpool would finish, roughly second or at least third and be fine. But they really looked pretty shambolic yesterday, hardly created anything. Chelsea under Tuchel, they started out, ironically, kind of doing what Arteta did, which is just looking solid, a lot of control of games, maybe not creating tons of chances, but now they're looking really effective. And so I'm sort of wondering, in your model, is the model starting to take Liverpool's swoon for real? And are they seeing a Tuchel bounce for Chelsea in terms of where it's expecting them to finish at this point?
Yeah, so I actually just ran one anticipation of this kind of question. So Liverpool are still the second best team according to this, but that gap between them and everybody else has definitely shrunk. Chelsea are definitely climbing up the list. They still have quite a bit of, the stuff from pre-Tuchel in here. But I think if I really kind of looked at a snapshot over the last few weeks, I definitely think that Chelsea would probably be the second best team. Their defense has basically just not allowed anything. I think that's been a pretty interesting tactic from Tuchel. I think we all kind of expected him to kind of come in here and try to use all the attacking toys that he has, but instead he's kind of been like, we're going to be solid. We're going to hold possession, and we're going to hopefully create just enough chances to eke out some wins. They've had a few draws along the way as well, but I think this has been a mostly good strategy for them. I think it's been a good way for him. We'll just put 3 or 4 attackers on the fields and see if we can do something, and basically not allow you to do anything.
So what I'm gonna do, Scott, and I feel like this wave of relief washing over me being in the position. I am unhappy with your internet. I'm going to remove you from the stream momentarily, and I'm going to let you sort it out while I stay on camera and talk football. And for those of you who missed this last time, that is the actual opposite of what happened. So let's talk for a minute here. I want to talk a little bit briefly just about something that we talked about on the podcast yesterday. And if you haven't listened to it, check out the latest episode, came out yesterday. Aaron West from CBS Sports was on that. Really enjoyed speaking to him ever so briefly and hope to do it again. But we really tried to focus on the young players. And, I think this is one of those situations where Arsenal have a very big moment arriving in this summer, because this is, you could argue, this is one of the greatest generations of academy talent we've produced in recent memory. Obviously, Saka and Smith Rowe look like the real deal. They're incorporated. Martinelli's not an academy kid, but a young player who's breaking through. But when you talk Willock, Maitland-Niles, Nelson, Eddie Nketiah, Balogun on the fringe of that, we have a lot of players whose futures need to be determined. And I think we just have to be a lot more comfortable being decisive about the future of these players. There's a tendency, I think, to want to always allow them the best possible chance to show their quality. And Paul and I discussed this a little on the last podcast. Does Eddie Nketiah, for example, deserve the opportunity to play as the number 9 now in this new 4-2-3-1, a system that would seemingly suit him a lot better for running in behind and being more of a poacher than the earlier 3-4-3 suited him, where he had to drop in and do a lot more hold-up play. And while I acknowledge that that is the case, I think the idea that we are going to ever be able to create the perfect situation for players to shine is a little bit of a falsehood. If you think about Bukayo Saka, how did he break in? Left wing back. That would not have been his preferred role. And then where did he move to? Left wide forward, and then back to left wing back. And then he shows up on the right. And what do you know? Wherever you put him, he thrives. Smith Rowe comes in at 10, which is his preferred position, I think you'd say. But then in a Leeds game where we score 4 goals, he's playing out on the left. The players that really have it, I think, still show you they have it, even when circumstances aren't perfect for them. And I think you'd have to say for Maitland-Niles, who, looked pretty good as a wing back, never really got a chance as a midfielder. You say, should we bring him back and make him a midfielder? Well, he's playing midfield now, and I don't think anyone's saying he's playing it at such a level that we got to go sign that guy and bring him back to Arsenal. So I think the perception that we need to have these young players, and I'll bring Scott back momentarily. We can get into the Burnley game and lineups and predictions, all that. But just to sort of finish off this thought, I think the idea that we have to create scenarios for young players that perfectly suit their skill set in order to evaluate them is understandable. We don't want to write off our young players, right? We don't want to be in a situation where we say, Willock stinks and Nketiah stinks. They mean something to us. They mean something to the fabric of the club. But the other thing you have to consider is that, first of all, your academy, when it churns out talent like this, when you can have a Willock who might be 15 million and Nketiah 20 million and Maitland-Niles 20 million, that is success. Most academies are lucky to produce a player that can be sold for real money, period. For us to have 2 academy players that look like first 11 selections in Smith Rowe and Bukayo Saka, and then have other academy kids who are worth 20, worth 15, worth 10, that is a massive boon to the club, because you had really no cost other than just developing them, the cost of the club's infrastructure to begin with. And you can go and you can turn 4 or 5 academy players into 50 or 60 million pounds. That can really change the trajectory for the club. And that is success. It's not just that they become a first-team player for Arsenal. The other thing that then happens, I think, is that you wind up in a situation with these players where, and Scott assures me he will be back momentarily, resetting his router. And again, I want to emphasize how much I love that it is Scott in the position of having the bad internet, not me. Someone wants to peek out my window. What I'm going to tell you is, however nice you might think it is out there, it is all snow and gray and ugly. Nothing you want to peek out of that window. But yeah, so to sort of finish this thought, I think the other thing that we consider with these young players is, when you have young players who are sort of stagnating, you are not only not developing their career and not recouping resources for them, but you're also in a situation where you may be blocking the path for the next generation. And you constantly want that cycle churning, because think about a Balogun, for example. And I'm not going to say that Balogun's going to be amazing, but by not having a path for Balogun, instead of him being a guy who got into the team this year and either made it or then he was sold for a fee, Balogun could leave for free this summer. Now, again, I'm not saying that craters the club or it's a disaster or anything like that. It's just my point that you need to be decisive. And I think Arsenal, not just with Academy, whether it was Alexis Sanchez not being sold and then being swapped for Mkhitaryan, or Aaron Ramsey being allowed to run his contract down, or all of these situations we've covered, it's not that Arsenal, is poorly run. It's more a case of, can we be more decisive? Can we make a decision recognizing that they may have downside? Sometimes you're going to sell a player and regret it. Sometimes you're going to move on an academy kid and regret it. But what you're definitely going to regret is stasis. It's just standing still. And I think we've stood still a bit. So I think in general that is something that we need to think about. And maybe Eddie Nketiah will go off and be a superstar somewhere. But if we get 20 million pounds for Eddie Nketiah and he can go off and have his career, that's good for everyone. As opposed to what's going on now with Reece Nelson, for example, who was this huge talent. Everybody, probably the biggest hyped talent of this group. And now what is his situation? We don't know. So Scott says the router has been restarted and hopefully that will fix things. We'll add Scott back into the stream at how great you look in high definition. So I'm assuming that you actually have fixed your internet.
Yeah, a little restart and hopefully things should be back. So I'm very excited.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I'm glad to have you back. All right. So let's get into some content about the game specifically. So first of all, you posted you posted on Twitter that we are heavily favored in this game, and I replied that everything is going to go exactly to plan, as always. But do you want to tell me what your model says in terms of Arsenal's chances for winning tomorrow against Burnley?
Yeah, basically Arsenal are a better team than Burnley. So that would tend to be that this is something that Arsenal should win. The only problem with that is I don't know how much rotation there's going to be because we do have the match on Thursday following this. Everybody should be rested before this. You know what? That'll be an interesting question that I think we'll probably talk about a little bit more is what do we actually expect for this one? So I think if we look at this, Arsenal have the stronger team, and that we should be pretty much favorites to win.
Yeah. In terms of, the way this game went last time, obviously, this was the Granit Xhaka red card game, the Aubameyang own goal, we lose 1-0. No one has, other than Sheffield United, no one has been less effective attacking than Burnley. So is the plan in this game really just to go all out to attack them because we're not particularly concerned about leaving ourselves open at the back?
Yeah, I'd also say West Brom, it may be slightly right there with them in the their attack rating. So I have them about equal on the ineptitude of attack. So I think that this is something that Arsenal shouldn't worry too much necessarily about the threat that they can provide, because I think even when we looked at that match, it wasn't something that Burnley really didn't deserve to score their goal. It was really almost nothing. And so I think this is something that Arsenal should really kind of lean into. We need to go put a, boot on their neck and really stop them from, getting into the match at all.
So here's the thing that I find difficult. Well, a lot of things. Standing up, carrying heavy weights, not looking my age. There are a lot of things I find difficult. But I think the challenge for Arsenal is that there aren't enough players in the squad that I trust to score goals. We have a lot of players playing better. I mean, Willian obviously played a lot better in his last game. Pepe's playing a lot better. Martinelli is available for selection. Lacazette has done a creditable job this year. But when push comes to shove, the fear for me is always if we rotate, we won't get the goals. And so we've got Olympiacos twice, and in between we've got Spurs in the derby. How much rotation can we realistically tolerate here, understanding that we're probably going to face a very compact, low block defense, and we don't necessarily have naturally a lot of goal scoring in the side? Like, it's hard, right? Because you think Burnley is a team we can rotate against from a quality standpoint, but I always sort of worry that we just won't have the end product if we do that. So where do you come down on rotating for this game to be fresh for the two Olympiacos legs and the derby, or just, hey, we've had a week off, these next 4 games, everybody plays?
I mean, I kind of come down towards almost running out the same lineup that we saw last weekend, and then kind of, have the big guns kind of, saved for reserve. If we need something at, 60 minutes kind of a thing, with an eye towards Thursday, because we really don't want to go into that match where we're, really struggling for fitness. So I think that I think that's kind of where I come down. The Europa League is more important at this point. I mean, we kind of look at what's possible in the Premier League, and with teams basically sucking, it's becoming more and more possible to finish higher. But I still see, a ceiling realistically at like 6th place. And, while that probably matches where our spending is, that doesn't really match our idea of where Arsenal should be. So I think if we want to think about what our goals are for next season, if it is the beginning of the Champions League, I think our best bet on that is going through the Europa League, which is probably our best chance of actually having a, quote unquote successful season. So I think that's probably where I would lean. I think you also kind of see it as, hey, you guys played well. You guys deserve another chance to go out and show that you deserve more minutes. So I can kind of see it going both ways. What about you?
It's tough because I think I would have expected a return to a full strength side with a week off, but given how the rotational options performed against Leicester, he may feel he wants to reward them. I also think the way he's been talking up Nketiah and the fact that he says it's sort of my fault he hasn't gotten minutes, maybe he feels he has to give that player minutes. I think he has a real soft spot for him. Yeah. Whether or not that's necessarily the best decision from a footballing standpoint, I really feel he cares about the player, so he'd be someone in line to start. I don't have a good sense of it, Scott, because I think he had shown previously an unwillingness to rotate, a desire to sort of stick with his core players, but then he plays Leicester, a good side, granted missing some players and pretty out on their feet from the looks of it, with a very heavily rotated team and gets a really good performance. So it would be unfair to those players to send them back to the bench to some extent.
Yeah, no, I think it would be. And one of the things I think that the team that we had against Leicester that made a little bit of sense. I know this is something that Tim has talked a lot about, and I think it's really kind of convinced me, is that we have two kind of players that are there to get shots, and we have two kind of creative players, and I think that gives a little bit more balance to the way the team plays. I really liked the lineup for when we played against Leeds, where I thought it was very important to have the technical players, where we brought in Smith Rowe to that. But when he kept running that out, it always felt that we were light on shots. So I like actually seeing Pepe come in for this. If it's going to be Lacazette or Nketiah or Aubameyang through the middle, I'm fine with pretty much any of those for this, as long as, we're still seeing kind of, a player who's going to be getting shots. But I think we needed that additional player who's there. So I think that is something that I would like to see. But then again, it's like, well, maybe we need that on Thursday as well. I don't know. It's one of those, it's hard to say.
I have a hard time seeing him not start Aubameyang, because at the end of the day, I think if you start Aubameyang, you figure you're good for a goal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Lacazette, I'm sure there are people listening who think Lacazette's having a great season. He's working his butt off. I admire his effort. I admire his energy. I think we overrate the things he does that are not goal scoring.
I agree.
In the sense that, like, look, hold up play matters and defense matters and pressing matters. I'm not saying it doesn't matter. But again, in his last outing, he scores a penalty, so he can't take it away from him. He scores a goal. Outside of that, he had no shots again.
No, and you looked at where his average touches are. He looks a lot more like a midfielder. I think, we looked at Odegaard, who had, had average touches, was higher up the pitch than Lacazette. I mean, part of that is not always where he's positioned, because, that's, if he doesn't touch the ball when he's positioned at the last defender, then, that doesn't count. But I think it is one of those things, his natural tendency to come forward does kind of loosen his effectiveness at trying to, actually score goals. So, yeah. Yeah. So I think whatever he picks, if he has Aubameyang in there, he's going to feel pretty good about his chance to get a goal. I'm not sure the same can be said about Lacazette. So it wouldn't surprise me if Aubameyang starts and then we see a mix and match. I mean, maybe this is a game for Martinelli to come back in. Maybe you still wind up with a Willian or Pepe and Saka getting another day off. I don't know where Thomas Partey is on fitness, but I am sure that he would love to get Partey maybe one more weekend off. I also, look, I think when you sit in a lower block, and maybe I'm wrong about this, I feel like, Scott, the central midfielders are not as essential for pushing the ball forward. Maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like in transition, under pressure, playing back to front, Partey can really turn defense into attack in an effective way, win the ball and get attacks going. But if Burnley are just going to sit back and really bed in, do you need a Thomas Partey? It's not like he's going to play the defense splitting pass. Can you kind of have just two midfielders who keep the ball, get it to someone else, and let them do the work, like a Ceballos and a Xhaka, or an El Neni and a Ceballos? I mean, Xhaka at some point is going to have to get a game off. But how do you think central midfield works in a game like this, and the importance of having Partey out there? Yeah, because I mean, if the midfield's actually not going to be contested, and they're basically going to allow you to basically bring the ball into the final third, that ability isn't necessarily as important. So you still will want somebody there who can break up counterattacks, because I think that'll be their main way of trying to hurt Arsenal. I think this one does feel like a Ceballos game. Because I think one of the things that, especially recently, that he's done well is he's actually looked to run forward. I think he's had actually pretty good understanding with Odegaard in that regard. That kind of goes together. But yeah, I think so. That's something that his ability to make like a third man run, because I think that's something that you'll need, is you kind of need to get superiority of numbers in those spots, and kind of where you have your forward players that are bringing the attention to the back line, and then you have a midfielder making a run from deep. So I think that maybe says this isn't a game for Xhaka. I guess to me, I think it would be nice to get Partey sometime, if it's, here we're going to give you 60 minutes and, it's kind of a pre-planned sub, or he's going to be kind of a first sub off the bench, get him 30 minutes kind of a thing. I think that would be really good. So I think that's, I don't know if I want him to go into full 90. I know we had the conversation with the good doctor, the center back guy. I can't remember his name, so if you could help me out with that one, that'd be great.
Oh, 3CB Performance, also known as Dr. Raj. Yep, he was
Dr.
on
Raj.
pod.
Yeah, I thought he was
excellent. Give him a
yeah,
follow.
that was a very good. And yeah, talking about the muscular injuries are so tough, where it's like you got to build up the intensity level, because it's like, we don't have the time to do it through practice, especially, maybe this week we do have a little bit of that. So I think that's something where let's get him some minutes, get him back to the intensity of these games to hopefully, but not a full 90. I don't know.
Yeah.
To me, yeah.
Yeah, I think the thing about getting Ceballos out there too is maybe just rehabilitating him a little bit, because the last time we saw Ceballos out there was...
He made the big mistake.
Yeah, a couple of big mistakes, if we're being honest, right? And so it wouldn't be a bad thing to get him back in fold playing and playing well. So, we'll have to see what happens there. I also, look, I don't think we've seen a party Ceballos midfield yet. And I've been curious about whether that's something that Arteta might see as an option. But, it just looks like Xhaka is going to be one of the primary guys played. As far as the number 10 position, I mean, I'm just going to assume that it'll be Odegaard, right? I mean, Smith Rowe's injury wasn't as bad as thought, thank goodness for that. But like, I still think it's funny. Smith Rowe and Odegaard play the position a little differently. I've been curious to get your take on this. I think Smith Rowe quickens the tempo. He's more connective. He's more get the ball, give it one touch, move into space, give it in one touch. A lot of quick movement, quick keep possession, keep the ball moving kind of passes. Not that the passes aren't hurtful, but I think of Odegaard as more of a defense splitting passer, someone who will hold it a little longer, look for the opening, look to curl in across to the back stick, or play a ball, a through ball in behind the center back and the full back. And it's not that I'm saying that Smith Rowe can't do that. I also think what Smith Rowe does that Odegaard maybe doesn't is that he will. I think Smith Rowe will get into the box and try to score goals, whereas Odegaard, I think, is a little bit less involved on the end of the move. But so, do you see a difference in how those two play, and do you just assume it'll be Odegaard so that Smith Rowe can get a little extra time to recover from the injury?
Yeah, that's my assumption. It's not that I mean, I think it's actually nice to have slight variations on the, interpretations of the role. I think it is a good point. I think one of the things is that Odegaard is a lot more of a magnet towards the ball. He really likes to be on the ball, especially if it's in deeper positions. So I think you'll see a lot more of that than what you'd see with Smith Rowe. Smith Rowe is definitely a lot more of, we're going to do one touch kind of passing and then runs. I think that's something that he does a lot better than Odegaard at this time. You definitely see that he's driving more into the box. He doesn't necessarily do a lot of the, the through balls or anything like that, because that's something that I've been incredibly impressed with Odegaard. Is he just tries some of those that are just audacious. Like, it's just amazing that he tries them. They don't always come off, but yeah, he definitely wants to do those kinds of things. And there's been a couple times where there's been just kind of a different sync between the other attackers, but I think that's something that if he was here for longer, could really become a very dangerous thing. I really like the way Smith Rowe will interchange with players, and I think that's something that has looked really good with him and Saka. So it is, just nice to have different options for that. I think both of them play the role nicely, but do it just slightly differently. Yeah,
well said. So we're getting a question here that I guess we can address, and someone's saying, "Can you tell me the difference between a horse and a moth?" And if you want to Google, look at this horse, you will find a video that I think will prove pretty categorically that I cannot tell the difference between a horse and a moth. So no, I cannot. And if you want to watch the video, be my guest. You tell me, how would you tell the difference between a horse and a moth? I think it's a lot harder than you might think. Let's do this. Let's bring up the league table. So here's what's on offer. We're sitting 10th, which still feels pretty nauseating to say. 3 points would put us on 40. That would move us up ahead of Villa, although at that point they'd have 2 games in hand. At 40 points, though, you start to look at it, and again, game in hand situations notwithstanding, 2 behind Spurs, 3 behind Liverpool, 5 behind West Ham, 6 behind Everton, and 7 behind Chelsea. And that's all the way up to 4th. We play West Ham. We play Liverpool. We play Tottenham. We play Everton.
Yep.
We do not play Chelsea.
Nope.
So I mean, Scott, I know the model probably says we have a very low chance of top 4, certainly, and some chance top 6. I'm going to ask you what the model says on both of those, but then I want you to set the model aside and use your actual brain, not your database that you tap into with your massive processing engine in your head, and tell me what you actually think, because I have really wrestled with this. On the one hand, I say it's too many teams to jump over. On the other hand, I say nobody's exactly in white-hot form. It's a really tough, unpredictable season, and we play Spurs, we play Liverpool, we play West Ham, we play Everton. If we were to win all of those games, and I'm not saying by a long shot we would, but if we did, you'd almost have to put us as a favorite to finish above a number of those teams. And I think that's where our season's going to be determined. And wait, do we play Chelsea? No, we played Chelsea.
We played Chelsea twice. They started kind of our run.
Right, yeah, December 26th, Boxing Day.
Yep.
So, okay, yes, okay, so moving on from that, there's a debate in the comments about whether we play Chelsea or not. And like anything on the internet, you can find the answer that best suits you, but for now, we're going to move on from that debate. Scott, what does the model say for top 6? What does it say for top 4? And then setting it aside and using your actual brain and not your database brain, what do you think is possible?
All right, so my model basically says top 4 is done for Arsenal. I looked here at the 538 and they still have 5%. I have it at about 1%. I think a lot of that is that I think that, well, Manchester City are essentially a lock for the title. So that means they have the first spot kind of locked up. I think Manchester United just have enough of a gap that they have top 4 pretty well locked up for me. I have them about 85%. And then it's kind of, there's a lot of teams there for the last 2 spots. I think Chelsea, on their recent form, probably have moved into that position where they have either second or third. So it's just a matter of, do they catch United kind of a thing. I think that they will do that. And then it leaves kind of one space for me up for grab. I think Liverpool are the better team, so they would probably be the favorite for that. But then there's still just a lot of teams for Arsenal to try to get ahead. And now that gap is smaller, and Arsenal have been in good form, and that's something that I do want to come back for. Cornballer did send a question about this, so that's something that, if we have some time later, we could go back to. So I think it's a chance. Arsenal really have some chances to play against teams that are ahead of us and, really have those 6-pointers. So if those things go our way, maybe. I still think it's somewhere between 1% and 5% is probably realistic for top 4. Top 6 is definitely more realistic. I have that at about 25%. I will look at what the 538 says, and that one they're looking 35%. So they're a little bit more positive on Arsenal in that. So it's not unrealistic, but there's still a lot to play.
Yeah. All right. So, I gotta say, I think top 6 would be a good result, all things considered. And I think there's some consensus on that. I've put on the screen just for everyone to see. I tried to tell Scott, to say, Scott, we definitely still play Chelsea away. We do. Okay. And he was like, no, we don't. No, we don't. No, we don't. I shouldn't have given in quite clearly. We do play Chelsea May 12th. So, I mean, it is an interesting situation, though. All joking aside, Scott.
That's where the schedule stuff has really screwed us up, because it feels like Christmas should be the time where it was halfway point, but it wasn't.
Yeah, but it wasn't. So again, as the guy who is our data analyst, your feelings, right? It's facts, not feelings, is what we're looking for from you. So what I would say is, we play Chelsea, we play Everton, we play Liverpool, we play Spurs, we play West Ham. They're all above us, and we play them all. And it really does feel in our hands to some extent. But then you look at a game like Wolves, or you look at a game like Villa, 2 games that I thought we were dominant in to some extent and under different circumstances. You put yourself in a hole where your margin for error gets so small. So let me ask you this. This is a tough one, but would you take an early Europa League elimination to really hunker down and try to do as well as we could in the league the balance of the season, knowing that fixture congestion is already such a problem this season? Or is the reward of the Europa League too big to throw it out? I mean, I look at the team still in the Europa League, and as excited as I am about the way we're playing, I think the likelihood that is a trophy we can win. Again, anybody can. It's a cup competition. We beat Chelsea and City on the way to an FA Cup last season, so I don't rule it out. But given the gauntlet that the Europa League looks like this season, Do you still think it's something we can go for and must go for, or would you be willing to see it fall by the wayside, given what might still be on offer in the league? Which is the one that for you feels more urgent?
I still kind of lead towards the Europa League. I think that Arsenal are the second best team in that competition right now. And I think that there's just a really good chance that we could get a European trophy out of this. I mean, one of Manchester United and AC Milan is not going to make it. There's a good chance that there's a relatively easy draw in the quarterfinals if Arsenal make it to that point. There's just not a lot of great teams left in there. So I think that there's a path for Arsenal to get, further in that one. So, I mean, I think that's still my number one priority. Your
number one priority is the Europa League. I tend to agree with you. I mean, because first of all, like, what is football really? What is football really? Well, that's the point. What is football really about? And while I think I am prepared to say, the FA Cup is not where our aspirations should end. I think the Europa League is a little bit of a different situation. So as we look at it now, United play Milan, so obviously only one of them can go through. I use my big boy brain to figure that out. Ajax and Young Boys. I mean, Ajax are formidable. The less said about Young Boys, the better on a stream that goes out over the internet. Dynamo Kiev, Villarreal. I don't know that you'd be particularly terrified of either of them, while both are fine. Slavia Prague, Rangers, again, not too worried, he says, jinxing everything. Granada mold. I think I may have some Granada mold in my kitchen, which I'm a little worried about. Roma, Shakhtar, again, both very good teams that have been Champions League teams in not too recent future. Tottenham, Dinamo Zagreb, never heard of either of them. And then Olympiacos, Arsenal. So you look at the matchups and you would say the teams you worry most about, obviously United and Milan, as you said, one of them goes. I would take an Olympiacos exit before I would take facing Tottenham in the final of the Europa League, because I don't know how many adjectives I can use to describe crapping my pants, but I would have no pants left to wear with the amount of pants crapping I would do if we had to face Tottenham in a European final.
We just experienced this with Chelsea, and that was really shitty.
Yeah, and this would be worse. Having said that, nothing. This is the hard thing about cup finals, right? There is no greater feeling than winning a cup final, let alone over a rival. But I cannot even fathom the pain of losing it to a rival of that level. I mean, I do think that if Milan gets past United, that's a better outcome for us. Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I don't know. I mean, yeah, because I think Milan are going to be something where they have a chance to do something in Serie A. Where
their season's kind of falling away, though, right?
Yeah, but I mean, they still have a realistic chance of qualifying for the Champions League there, and they don't want if they can't really put all of their eggs in the Europa League basket, so they are definitely going to be a team that would be fighting on two fronts there, where they couldn't necessarily pick one or the other.
Yeah, well, we'll have to see. Is there any fear about what's his name, the guy who used to coach us? Emery, an Emery matchup.
Maybe, I don't know. This is supposed to be his tournament, the Europa League. So,
yeah, that I could do with.
Again, that'd be another one where just the narratives, if Arsenal lost, would just be so horrible, and I would hate to be around that.
Yeah,
and Villarreal, they're not a bad team. Looking at the the 538 rankings, they are the 5th best team, so they're not a bad team. Roma is right there with them, but both of those teams are not as good as Arsenal. So, I mean, that's something good.
Yeah. Well, look, I agree. I think our squad, as weird as it sounds, is deep enough to probably manage the two. The obvious, easy answer here is go out on Thursday and pound Olympiacos into the ground in Greece and give yourself an easier day before the derby.
Yeah.
So I think that would be the case. Look, Arteta is at an interesting position here, Scott, because we can now finish this season in such a way that any fear or any hesitation there was about Arteta is gone. If he can even steer us back into the top 6 with the way we've been playing and get us late into the Europa League, I think people are going to be over the moon. If he wins the Europa League, man, who would even know how to stop the hype train? And it just feels so weird. Can you think of a situation where a coach got as close to what felt like the abyss as he did before that Boxing Day game against Chelsea, sitting in the relegation zone, 12 goals from 13 games, looking like it was too much for him, and has turned... I can't think of a situation where you started to see the stories of like one more loss and it may be time. That never turns around. And it feels like it's really turned around, but the season I think the season has two ways it can go. It's sort of a sliding door situation now, because if we crash out of the Europa League, let's say against Olympiacos, don't get the keep the momentum going in the league and finish ninth, it's going to be really hard to evaluate this season, because it will have been a period of terrible performance, woeful relegation form performance, really bright rejuvenation, and then it falls flat. And I sort of wonder for you, what do you think Arteta has to do between now and the end of the season, having kind of turned it around a little, for the narrative at the end of the season to be, we believe in him, he's shown us he's good, let's continue with him? Is that a guarantee? What has to happen for the narrative around Arteta to stay positive when the end of the season rolls around? What bars does he have to clear?
I mean, for me, it's probably to continue the process of good performances. I mean, if the results don't go against, or kind of go against Arsenal, I'm probably okay with that. But if, Arsenal continue to outplay most of the teams that we face, I'll be very happy. We look at since Christmas, or since Boxing Day, Arsenal are, the fourth best team, points. I think points per game, we might be slightly... Nope, we're still right at that same spot, right near with West Ham. And it's been positive. Arsenal have been, in the positive goal difference. The performances have been good. You start to see that this is kind of how we want to be able to see from this. And you look at the schedule, and yes, it's been easy, but it hasn't been crazy easy. I looked at this, and the average, the strength of schedule for Arsenal has been about 12th right now during this period. So not crazy easy, but still a good, kind of thing. Like, Arsenal have played some good teams and performed well. So I think that if we are able to continue this same kind of thing, we're looking at about a 2 point per match, pace right now. And if, maybe if that drops a little bit, 1.8, so that's a, 68 point pace, I'd be very happy with that, because I think most of the time that gets you in the conversation for fourth. And I don't necessarily think that the talent on this team is fourth best right now. So I think that if he's able to, maybe see that this is a better team, or playing better than the talent of this team, I think that would be good. The cup competitions are always tough, because it can be very fine margins where you get knocked out on something. So I wouldn't be too bad. Again, as long as Arsenal don't go get outplayed crazy in any of these matches. So I think those would be things that would be positives for me. If, you kind of spelled out a situation where if, things kind of go sideways, man, I don't know, maybe you do make a decision that, things didn't, we had a really bad thing that he pulled us out of, but then he couldn't keep the momentum going. Why not? Maybe it is time to make a decision. So it's a tough final, 3 months of the season for him.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's tricky, but look, I don't exactly conceal my opinions. I tend to be pretty forthcoming with them. I was really right there on the abyss with him right before that Chelsea game. And I can't think of a situation where I've come so far around on my opinion on something. I mean, I am really encouraged by what he's done. And, there's a part of me that's frustrated he didn't come up with it sooner, but I'm really encouraged by it. So let's do the obvious thing with Burnley tomorrow and Olympiacos on Thursday and talk summer transfer window, because #clicks. I think what we did in January was really smart. We prioritized clearing out players that didn't have a future at the club. I think that's going to be another big part of what we want to do this summer. Assuming that let's say we somehow creep our way back into Europa next season, but we don't win the Europa League, and we're just sort of in stasis. What are the things we need to do this summer to ensure that we can have a better season next season? Because I think the squad looks very different to me right now than it did even 4 or 5 months ago, just through the form of certain players and the emergence of certain players. So in terms of outgoings, and not incoming names, but incoming positions, like what for you needs to happen this summer for us to go into next season saying there's a clear path to an improvement?
To me, when I looked at the depth chart kind of for next season, I think the number one obvious thing for me is that central midfield needs to be strengthened. You start looking at that, and we have Partey and Xhaka, and I guess do you really want to count El Neni? I mean, I would rather not. I don't think Torreira and Guendouzi, players that are out on loan, have any chance of coming back, as much as I'd like to see both of them maybe given a chance. I just think that ship has sailed. So I think that is definitely the number one priority. Is you just need another body there, because next season is going to be very similar, where it's going to be a super compressed schedule where there's going to be lots of rotation, and you're going to need to be able to have that. Can you count on Granit Xhaka to play 50 games again? Like, that's going to be incredibly tough. So I think that's my number one priority.
Yeah, I mean, I think getting a partner, sort of pre-prime, early prime, who has that athleticism, that mobility, maybe someone who has some goals in them. I'd love to add some goals in midfield from somewhere. Yeah. A Ramsey type partner for Partey would be great. Ramsey's sort of a unicorn, so it's a little bit difficult to say who that person would be. But if you look at City, for example, right? They have one guy who sort of is the glue in midfield, and the other guys, whoever they wind up being, can drop back and defend, but they can also go forward and create. They can get in the box, score goals. Obviously, Kevin De Bruyne is a unicorn himself. You're not going to have a De Bruyne, but maybe someone who has a little bit of that range of skills. And you say, well, is that what the Odegaard Smith Rowe role is going to be? I think a 6 and 2 8s is sort of the modern solution. And one of those 8s can drop in and be a double pivot, or the 2 can go forward. So I tend to agree with Clive that Smith Rowe is more 8 than 10, that is kind of what he is. Let me ask you this. Could we buy Odegaard? And is there a scenario where Smith Rowe, as his body bulks up and he gets a little stronger and hopefully eliminates injury issues, can be more of an 8 than a 10? And I'm not saying maybe in a double pivot with Partey necessarily, but be a little more of a two-way box-to-box type player with Odegaard between the lines? Or do you not think that from a physical profile, Smith Rowe can manage that?
I mean, I think so. I mean, I don't think that if Arsenal buy Odegaard, that necessarily makes it so that Smith Rowe can't play as well. I think that there's enough for them both to be able to play. There's enough games, and especially with attackers, especially younger attackers, those are guys that, it makes sense to keep their legs fresh and say, hey, go out there and give me 60 strong minutes and, leave everything there. So I think that there's enough room for being able to do something like that. I really like the idea of a Smith Rowe, Partey, maybe Bissouma, behind them kind of a thing. I think something like that would be really good. I think if you have somebody who can be, the anchor man and, let Partey and, somebody else go forward. If it's, if we're going to play a 4-2-3-1, you can still have a guy in that number 10 role that, is kind of a box to box, who can help out in midfield when that is needed, and who also can make runs in the middle. So I like that, because I think Odegaard can do that. I think Smith Rowe can do that. I think both of them, Odegaard can play on the right. Smith Rowe is obviously able to play on the left, because that's where we've seen him be pretty successful with Arsenal. So I think both of them could have roles in that. And I think we just need options in the attacking midfield range. And I think that's something that's probably the second choice, that we need probably to get another guy in that so we can have the strength.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of shouts for Bissouma, right? Anguissa is another good shout. But I think there's got to be more goals in the team, period.
Yeah.
So you've got Aubameyang. Maybe Lacazette moves on. Maybe you bring in a guy like Odison Edouard, to maybe try to audition as the heir apparent at the striker role. Pepe hopefully starts to add goals. Saka obviously has some goals. Martinelli maybe adds goals, and you start to feel a little better about it. But one guy that can run in from midfield and add it. I think Smith Rowe could be that guy. Maybe it's a guy we have to go into the market and get, but we just don't get anything from midfield right now. Granit Xhaka doesn't score goals. Thomas Partey hasn't really played much for us, but he hasn't scored goals. Ceballos doesn't score goals. This is where we try to go next level on analysis. So I'm sorry if I'm leaving some people at the ground level here. Scoring goals helps you win games. If you score more goals than the opposition, you get a win. If you score the same number of goals as the opposition, you get a draw. And if you score fewer goals than the opposition, you get a loss. So just a little bit of hashtag analytics there for the viewers. Edouard may be going to Leicester by the look of it. We have a message with that. That'd be a shame, because I sort of rate him. And I do tend to think of Leicester as a smart club, so it doesn't surprise me. As far as Odegaard goes, Scott, there's rumors we're still in for Awar, who we did a scouting video for on the Patreon side of things. And we also did a scouting video for Buendia. And I got to admit, I like
I'd be
both.
happy with either of them. Yeah,
I like both. But is there an argument that Odegaard, while maybe not quite as ready as either of those two, I think both look a little bit ahead of him. Well, Buendia can score goals in a way that I don't think Odegaard can. I think Aouar maybe can too, although maybe Odegaard gets there. But Odegaard has the advantage of now having been at Arsenal, integrating, playing for Arteta. It's more of a known commodity. And as we saw with Pepe, you don't know if or how long or if at all a player is going to take to integrate. So is there an argument that if you look at Aouar, Buendia, and Odegaard, and say we could get all three, and say they're all within a range of price that we're comfortable with, that the safest plan is to go with the one who spent a little time here, assuming he finishes the season looking pretty good?
Yeah, it probably is. He has a little bit less of that, the getting used to how Arsenal do things. Buendia's at least had the Premier League experience, which, everybody kind of talks about. He lives in England already, so he's used to that. We talked a little bit previously about, the free 8 kind of thing, and that is basically what Aouar does. He is not an attacking midfielder. He is a midfielder who attacks. He's tried to play, Leon has tried to play him further up the pitch, and that hasn't really brought out anything better for him. He looks really good as an 8. So I think that would have been fitting perfectly if Arsenal was switched to something like a 4-3-3. To me, I think if we look at absolute ceiling, I think Odegaard might have, the potential to be a superstar, an absolute, maybe top 5 player kind of a thing. And I think that would be something to really be good to take a bet on. When he was making his decision on where he was going to go, Arsenal were supposedly close. So I don't think that it's out of the question that, he would be averse to signing with Arsenal. So I think that there's, I would love to have all three. If Arsenal, had one of them, that'd be awesome. So yeah, I wouldn't be overly, critical if we landed any of them.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, the thing with Odegaard, right, is it seems pretty basic. Like if Zidane stays at Madrid, we can get Odegaard. Yeah. I mean, assuming he wants to come to us. If Zidane doesn't stay at Madrid, then it's just going to depend who comes in and if Odegaard's in his plans. I do tend to think that once players hit this kind of age where they're still being loaned out, they tend to break away from the club. I can't think of a lot of scenarios of players getting into their 23-year-old season, being as a loanee and coming back and going on to have big careers at a club. I mean, is that something?
Exactly. Yeah, it's definitely more. It's more likely that they're going to leave than they are to come back. I'm sure there are exceptions to that, but that would probably be the general feeling. Yeah.
So I mean, between those three, honestly, I'd be happy with any of them. I just think that the safe bet is Odegaard if he becomes available and continues to play the way he has, because he'll have been integrated. As far as young players and outgoings in that respect, I'm going to guess that we're on the same page here. Willock, Maitland-Niles, Nketiah, Nelson, probably all can go in the summer. I mean, and again, saying that a player should be sold for a good fee isn't the same as saying they stink and they're not good enough. It's just sometimes that's the outcome. We sold Iwobi for a very good fee, and it was a very good deal for all interested parties.
Yeah.
And oh, by the way, created a path for players like Bukayo Saka. I said on the podcast, Scott, that like we sometimes have this feeling that, oh, if only the player played in this position under these circumstances, everything would have worked out. But as we've seen from football, it's very, I remember when we signed Mesut Ozil, Theo Walcott was injured for a while. And we were all like, oh, just when Theo's back and he's running in behind, what Mesut's going to put so many balls on a plate for him? Or when we signed Aubameyang, oh, wait till you see what Mesut Ozil and Aubameyang, are you kidding me? And like, I understand why in theory a lot of these things pan out, but football doesn't always present you with the perfect scenario. If a player can't thrive in the challenging real-world scenarios that football presents, keeping them around, waiting for them to thrive in the perfect lab-created scenario probably is not best. So for me, those players all are at a point where their career needs to move on, and I'd be fine doing it. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, I mean, it really does feel that Arsenal have gone almost too much in the other direction, where we are definitely holding out for the best case scenario for a lot of our young players, really hoping that they do something, maybe holding on a little bit too long. And then when it does kindly get proven that they maybe aren't at the level, there's no real resale value for them, and we're not really getting the most out of our academy. I mean, I think realistically, we need to expect that, Arsenal are hopefully, the top 1% kind of a club. And, it's just going to be realistic that, a lot of our academy players aren't going to make it at that club. But that doesn't mean that they're bad players. I mean, they're already at, a really high level. So it's okay for us to sell down the table for that. And, maybe some of them will blow up on us and that sucks. But if, we have, 10 players and one of them blows up, but we sold the other 9 and we're able to get, maybe 2 or 3 other players that have helped Arsenal, I think that's a trade we're willing to do. So it's nothing is risk-free. It's all about trade-offs. And, by holding on to players in hope that they turn out amazing, we are potentially losing out on transfer fees where other players could come in and help the team. So it's
Fair
like neither thing comes without risk.
And look, some people would accuse me here of beating a dead horse, but what I would say to them is it's beating a dead butterfly. Thank you very much.
I thought it was a moth.
Yeah, actually, probably. What do we think with Hector Bellerin? I mean, I think, look, I'm in a position, I've said this before, I still think Hector Bellerin is a better player than Cedric Suarez. I don't think Hector Bellerin is playing better than Cedric Suarez right now, which is a shame. But I also don't think Cedric Suarez is good enough to be Arsenal's right back going into next season as the first choice. Do I think Hector Bellerin is? I think if I believed he could recapture the form I know he's capable of, and he's 26 years old, okay. It may be time, though, for these parties to go their separate ways. He's had a nice career at Arsenal. He got an injury. He hasn't come back at the level that we might want to see. Is this a case of a player's career at Arsenal maybe running its course? We get good money for him. We move on. And in your mind, do we then have to target right back in the market? Because I don't think Maitland-Niles is the solution there. And I'm certainly not thinking of Cedric as we want him to be our first choice right back going into next season.
Yeah, believe it or not, I actually wrote 2,000 words on this just recently.
I didn't know you had 2,000 words. Congratulations. That's great. You spoke 2,000 numbers, did you mean? No?
Yeah. So I did look at this, and I think one of the things that, I come out and I like Bellerin. I know he is an incredibly divisive player where opinion on him, where everybody's mind has been made up. One of the things that I did notice kind of really digging into it is that the gap between him and Cedric is a lot smaller than I would like and that I would hope. And that's saying that I don't think Cedric has been bad, but he's definitely, I don't think the player that Arsenal would want in that. And so I kind of came away from that saying, yeah, it probably does make sense for Arsenal to get an improvement on that. I think that, kind of looked at things and they do play it in a different way. And so we need to kind of, figure out what Arteta wants from his right back, because it seems like he doesn't necessarily want both players to be the overall, the overlapping run. He wants one to be more reserved and you'll be able to keep the shape and do those kinds of things. So if we want to find someone who can do that, a Joe Cancelo kind of a way, I think that would be
just one of those Cancelos.
Yeah, exactly. One of those. Yeah,
let's just pick up one of those Cancelo guys that can do everything from every place on the pitch. Sure, yeah.
Exactly. I mean, in someone in that role who can play it like a midfielder, I think that would be something that would be good if that's the way that we want to do it. We need to go find someone who can go do that, because I don't know if Bellerin has been excellent doing that. I mean, I think he's been pretty good at getting into good positions. But I think I've been frustrated with his final ball a lot this season. I think that's something that a lot of people have been as well. But I don't think that, again, Cedric is not better than Bellerin, but that's saying that, we can't improve on that position.
Yeah, I mean, at some point you have to be realistic about someone's form, and you just have to be ruthless. It stinks, but that's football. It may be the case that Hector Bellerin is not going to get back to the level we'd like to see him. That's sad because I like him, but solve the problem you have, not the problem you wish you had.
Exactly. Let's again, this is something that could blow up on us, but I'm you got to take that risk sometimes and kill your darlings and be willing to sell a year too early over a year too late.
Yeah, and I just want to say that kill your darlings is a figure of speech and not a recommendation from the Arsenal Vision post-match podcast. All right, let's get into prediction time here, Scott. Tomorrow, give me the lineup you predict he will pick, not the one you hope he will pick.
I think it'll probably be really close to what we saw against, Leicester. I think we might see Ceballos come in for, Xhaka. So I think we might see a Ceballos El Neni double pivot, but I think everything else will be roughly the same. I really do think that'll probably be it. We'll get another Willian. We'll get, I guess Odegaard will come in for Smith Rowe.
Odegaard for Smith Rowe. Okay, I think Bellerin will come back in at right back. Tierney will start at left back. I think it'll be Luiz and Gabriel.
Okay.
I think he'll go Shaq and Ceballos and try to give Partey one more. It's weird, right? Partey was never injured at Atletico, and now we're like, never play him in case he breaks. Just never. The best way to keep him fit is to make sure he never plays. The reason I picked Luiz, by the way, I think in a game where we really need to break down a pack defense, having his extra passing. We've seen against some of these teams that sit deep, Luiz likes to really come into the midfield and add another passing midfielder almost. He did it even against Leicester at times. He was coming into that right half space. So I think he'll go with Luiz for that. I think if you have Holding and Gabriel or Holding and Marie, I'm not sure if you have as much build-up support from the back. Just a thought. I think so. Shaq and Ceballos, because Partey can never play because God forbid he falls to pieces. So then the hard stuff. I think Odegaard at 10. I don't think Smith Rowe will be risked. My guess, it's weird. He started Martinelli against United, took him off at halftime, and we really haven't seen him since. I wonder what pressure he feels he's under to play guys like Martinelli and Nketiah right now. He really likes Nketiah. Martinelli's got a big future. He's got to find places for them.
Yeah, did
Burnley,
Nelson just play today in the under-23s? So I don't think
Nelson did?
Yeah.
Yeah, Nelson's not going to play. Yeah. By the way, in terms of seeing Partey and Ceballos, it is worth wondering, does Xhaka ever get a game off? Now, he's just gotten a week off, which for him is like an eternity. He probably was desperate to play 3 or 4 times this week. But yeah, Ceballos and Partey would be interesting because not only would it be a chance to rest Xhaka, but it'd be a chance to see how that partnership works, having never tried it before. Because the last thing you want to do is try a new partnership like in the Europa League knockout rounds or in the derby. So could be a good opportunity to try that. I think it'll be Odegaard. I think we'll get one surprise and maybe unpleasant inclusion in the front line. So I think Willian will start again. I think Aubameyang will start. And I think Saka will start. I think it'll be Willian, Aubameyang, and Saka. And I mean, I don't know what it is about Thomas Partey, but not Thomas Partey, about Nicola Pepe. But I think given the opportunity, for whatever reason, he just finds reasons to pick someone else. And it's not me saying that I think he hates Pepe. It just feels like he goes for other options when they're available. And
which is really tough because I thought he was really, really good against Leicester. I mean, he basically forced the halftime sub because that guy could not live with him. And yeah, he was probably one of his best performances this season. Just really good. Yeah.
So for me, it's going to be one surprise in the front three. I think Aubameyang and Saka probably come back in. He'll want to keep them fresh. Now they've sat down for 8 days, 9 days, whatever it is. So get him out there. I wouldn't be surprised if we're winning or even if we're not winning, that he's got some pre-planned subs around 60, 65 minutes to get one of those.
He doesn't make a sub until 70.
Sorry, 71 minutes yet to get Saka off for Martinelli, or Aubameyang off for Lacazette or whatever the case may be. But we shall see. So that's what I think lineup-wise. What do you think score-wise?
I mean, I think realistically, this could be a match where Arsenal score 3 or 4. Burnley are just not very good. Although, surprisingly, they've out-XG'd their opponents in 4 of their last 6 matches. But even then, I still don't think they're very good. And I think against good teams, Sean Dyche just tends to play ultra-conservative. And I think that Arsenal should have the players to be able to cut through them. So I think this could be a 3-4-1 kind of situation.
Yeah. Well, gosh, from your lips to God's ears. I'm encouraged by our recent play. I think we will play pretty well. I think this is the kind of team that the whole game comes down to the first goal, because if you score early, kind of like Spurs did against them, and they have to do any playing out, they have to come at you at all, that does not suit them. But God forbid you give them something to protect. I think you're playing into their hands. So I think we want to go at them aggressively early. And if we get that goal, then it could be a really fun day. But if it starts to get late and it's still at 0-0, or God forbid we've gifted them a goal, then you're really playing into their hands. So I have not actually predicted anything there. I've just described all the scenarios by which football can take place. Let me go ahead and say I think it'll finish 3-0. I think it'll finish 3-0. I think the way we're playing right now, I fancy us to do it. I hate to rely on things like momentum and belief, But gosh, coming off the way we rescued the Europa League and then beating Leicester with a rotated side, there's got to be a good morale in the team. And this is the ultimate point. We just got 9 days off at a time of the season where people are playing every 3-4 days. And Burnley have played 2 really tough games back to back. I mean, I know they got a result. Was it against Leicester just yesterday or whatever?
Yeah.
Now they have to play the first game of the weekend. And that, by the way, should remind you, Scott, it's a 4:30 a.m. kickoff.
Yeah, so that's part of the reason I'm also being extra optimistic, because it would be really hard to wake up at 4:15 when I know that it's a lost cause.
Yeah, but I think this is a game where we're fresher, they're tired. Maybe they look and they say, hey, after this game, we've got a week off between all our games. This is the last of their congested fixtures. Maybe they even rotate a bit. Not throw this game, but recognize it might not go their way, and then align themselves, position themselves to be ready for the run that's coming after this. Fair point. I guess my real prediction, of course, is the one that I'm going to be saying just momentarily. So I think we can leave it there, but the most important thing to say is that we love you. Try to say it a lot because we mean it a lot. What a wonderful community of people watching, listening, supporting on Patreon. If you don't support on Patreon, obviously, thank you so much for just being here on this live stream and being part of the podcast. And if you do support on Patreon, it means the world to us. We'll have a big announcement on a big event coming up. More on that as soon as it's available. Scott is on Twitter at _that_crab. Thanks, Scott.
It's been a lot of fun. Finally, once they got the internet working.
Your internet, for once.
Yes.
By the way, and a big shout out to Mediacom. I've been very, very mean to them, but if this is any indication, I think you're going to start to see a lot more live streams and video content from us, because it appears to have held up the whole time. So wherever you are, whatever you're doing, I hope you're doing brilliantly. I hope you're healthy. I hope you're safe. I hope you're happy. I hope you've had time with family and friends if possible. And if not, we are certainly here together to be family and friends in the meantime. And early morning tomorrow. So the bags are only going to get heavier. And we'll be back tomorrow with our Patreon Instant Reaction podcast, and then more and more and more. So we love you. We will talk to you after Arsenal 10, Burnley 0.